Oh, I've had chili stuck in my head the last couple weeks. Been to Wendy's a couple times, got some, that wasn't good enough. So let's just make our own homemade pot of Wendy's chili. Let's get started. Obviously, the first thing we need is a couple pounds of ground beef, some onions, some celery, some salt and pepper, of course, garlic powder, some oregano, some chili powder, and that's a teaspoon of ground cumin. Let's clear everything off and get started. We also need some diced tomatoes and some stewed tomatoes, a can of kidney beans, and a can of pinto beans, which I didn't have, so I'm substituting a can of pork and beans because I know that stuff works. And that's everything we're going to need. So here's our onions. I thought I might need all of those 2 little onions. As it turns out, after I was done chopping and took a look at how much they made, about 1.5 of those. So you're looking at close to a good large onion. You know, it depends on what your onion intake is, whether you like them or not. I love them, so I can't get enough, but as you see, that's just over a cup of diced onions. So we'll put that aside. Next up, our celery. And I'm just going to chop it into smaller bites. That's my preference. You don't have to. You can make them a little bigger if you want. I think in a lot of ways, Wendy's or anyone else, when they're making stuff like this, they purposely make them small so they're in there, but they can spread out the amount. So that's basically 2 stalks of celery and just under about 3/4 of a cup in there. So there you go. And now I figured, since it's all going in the same pot, let's take our onions and top it up. So we got 2 cups of celery and onions ready to go. I'll put the rest aside for when I need them. Next up is a green pepper. Did you like the way I cut that up? That way you avoid all the seeds, or most of them. And we're going to chop this up too. Now it specifically said green, but you know, red and yellow, if that's all you got, I guess that's what you're using. The green kind of contrasts with the reds in the chili. Now look at that. We're just about done our prep work. So into a pot, a big pot, because, you know, we got a lot of chili to make. Here's our 2 pounds of ground beef. I'm going to break all this up just to give it a head start and throw just a little touch of water in it on account of it's easier to break down that way. So we're going to mush it all around the ground beef until we get it cooked down to almost done. And it's kind of fun. But you don't want big chunks of hamburg in your stew. Well, maybe you do. I don't know. I don't really care for it. I like to get it down to almost nothing. So it's nice and crumbly. And we're getting there. We're about halfway ready to rumble. And the fun part with chili is it's layer upon layer upon layer. You just keep building. So we're going to put about a teaspoon of salt and pepper in right now. And of course, this is to taste. You don't want to put any salt in, don't. There's nothing says you have to. It's just it helps out. I mean, if this were chicken or turkey, I could see why you might want a little bit for flavoring. But you know what? The other thing too is there's also salt substitutes you could use and still get the same kind of salty flavor. Our ground beef's cooked pretty close to done. Let's start assembling some stuff. So in goes our green peppers. Yummy. Let's get all of them in there. Next up, our onions and celery. And now let's kind of mix all that together. It doesn't look like much right now, but this is going to make a good half pot of chili. That's our cumin, garlic powder, oregano, and chili powder. A little bit of salt and pepper again, once again, all to taste. I'm not a huge cumin fan, and I actually put in what the recipe called for, which was a teaspoon. I wasn't sure that was the right way to go, but you know, in this case, it really was. And just for a surprise, that is a handful of frozen diced up jalapenos I had. Okay, here's our tomatoes. That's the stewed tomatoes. And for some reason, this can had really big tomatoes that I probably should have cut up. And of course, our can of diced tomatoes. So let's mix this up. And, you know, I'm going to try and chop up the Roma tomatoes from the stewed tomatoes as best I can. But like I said, I probably should have cut them into half or thirds just to get through this. And I'm not, usually with stewed tomatoes, that's not an issue, but for some reason it is. Here comes our kidney beans. I've already pre-rinsed them. And that's one thing you want to do with kidney beans is pre-rinse them, for God's sake, so you get all that goo. You don't want that. And here's our can of pork and beans, our pinto bean substitute. Ooh, just building up. Yummy. There, I was having a bit of a hard time getting all the beans out, but we managed. And of course, if you're like my kids and don't like beans, too bad it's going in the chili. Well, you don't have to have it. But I'm trying to recreate Wendy's chili, so I want it to be as close to what they've got as possible. We'll give her a mix, and as you can see, we've got almost 2/3 of that stock pot. I got enough chili for an army right now. Now, like I said, I was using 2 different recipes, so I kind of had to judge which one I was going to follow. One of them called for a cup of water, one called for a quart or a liter of tomato juice. I kind of thought, okay, how about I just put the cup of water, I'm just going to make that tomato juice. And it wasn't really tomato juice, it was garden cocktail, which is kind of like V8. So in she goes. Now it's looking really good. I think we're just about done. I'm going to put the lid on and let it simmer for about an hour. And of course, I went and stirred it every half hour to check up on it, because you know what happens if you don't? It burns at the bottom, and I can't stand that. So this one's looking really good. You can see some of those tomatoes still haven't broken down enough. They will. Spoiler alert for tomorrow and the next day, they actually do break down. But right now, I still got to chop them up a little bit and keep mixing. It seems a little liquidy, but that's not out of the ordinary. Eventually, this will thicken up, given more time. Okay, so now we've got to taste it. I want to see how well everything's melding together. It tastes pretty good. And we're done cooking right now. But I've learned this from years and years. You got to let everything meld together. So we're going to put the lid on. And because I'm making this early enough, I'm going to let it sit for an hour, hour and a half. Oh, see how it's thickened up a little bit? Isn't that cool? This looks really good. And the chili smell is absolutely, it's going through the whole house. I love it. Now all that's left, let's get her in a bowl and give her a try. Ooh. Come on, if you're a chili fan, this is good. It really is. I also had my daughter go out and get a small thing of Wendy's chili so I could compare the two. So there's the one I just made. Yummy. Some crackers. There's Wendy's. And of course it comes with crackers too. And that's it. Now we've got to try them both. And this is fun when it's a side-by-side comparison. My chili was about as close to Wendy's as you're going to get. And I had fun making it. Now it's time to eat. Hey, another great recipe. I hope you'll give it a try. Leave me a comment below, one way or the other. Listen, if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell, because that'll tell you the next time I upload a video. Feel free to share this and any of my other videos. And thanks for stopping by and watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.